Hi, and welcome to the Animal Training Academy podcast show, the show for animal training and behaviour nerds, where I, Ryan Cartledge, interview the world's most proficient animal training and behaviour geeks. We're absolutely thrilled and grateful to have you here with us today. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on whatever you're listening to this on so that you don't miss a single episode. Each episode of this show is brought to you on behalf of the ATA membership. And if you like the conversations in this episode, then you're invited to continue them with like-minded behaviour nerds within the membership area, which you can find out more about at www.animaltrainingacademy.com. You'll get access to twice monthly live web classes, the back catalogue of previous web class replays, plus a huge library of videos and projects to help problem solve your training challenges. Plus, we're a sociable bunch with an exclusive private Facebook group and forum areas. It's like a Netflix social media platform for animal behaviour geeks. But we will start today's episode where we will be talking to one Nicole Pfaller-Sadovsky, PhD. As a long-time dog owner since 1994 and a dog trainer certified according to animal welfare and protection legislation awarded by the Austrian Ministry of Health and the Missouri Research Institute, VetMed Vienna, Nicole founded her own dog training business in 2008. Happy Fellow Coaching and Seminars. Since then, she has worked with clients whose dogs display a wide range of problematic behaviours, such as fear-related behaviour, inter- and intra-specific aggression, or stereotypic behaviours. Additionally to her work as a behaviourist, Nicole frequently teaches retrieving classes as a fun and stimulating activity for all dogs, but also for dog owner teams participating in retriever-specific competitions. Nicole holds a BSc with honours degree in Applied Animal Behaviour from the University of Portsmouth, UK, and an MSc degree in Applied Behaviour Analysis from Queen's University, Belfast, UK. In 2022, Nicole completed her PhD in Biological Sciences with an emphasis in Behaviour Analysis at Queen's University, Belfast. Currently, she researches canine learning, human-dog interactions, and owner training from a behaviour analytical perspective as a visiting scholar affiliated with Queen's University Belfast. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure to welcome Nicole to the show today. Nicole, thank you so much for taking the time to come and hang out with us at Animal Training Academy.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, and it's great to be here. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. I had a great time getting to know you a little bit last week when we caught up for a pre-recording chat. So I'm really excited to learn more about you, learn about the things you've been doing over these next two episodes. So let's start by going all the way back to where you first got started. Nicole, I was hoping that you could please share with the listeners of this show where you got started, where you first learned about animal training, about positive reinforcement, and share some stories with us from your journey.
Absolutely. So I got my first golden retriever female when I was 12 years old, and her name was Jutta. And with her, I had the great pleasure to explore all sorts of different dog training avenues, basic obedience, but also a little bit of agility and especially retrieving work, which is typically called dummy training. It's unfortunately not a very flattering name, but it pretty much sums up what we are doing. But we're getting to that part in a little bit. So it was in the early mid 1990s that I got my first dog, and from then on, I was just an avid dog owner, trying different things. And when I say it was a pleasure working and living with Jutta, I also have to mention that unfortunately, our first training experiences were very aversive based. So, and I think many of our listeners can relate to this. Many trainers and owners started out, especially when they started so early, with aversive dog training methods. But fortunately, a couple of years later, with the adoption of my first Nova Scotia Dog Tolling Retriever female, her name was Emma, in 2003, and again, sometimes in life you just have, to be lucky enough to be at the right places at the right time. And I had the great pleasure and honor to meet Sally Sanford. She was one of the first clinical certified animal behaviorists in the UK. And she actually introduced me to positive reinforcement training, positive reinforcement dummy training, gun dog training stuff, clicker training, and ever since that time, I am very much a proponent of clicker training and, of course, positive reinforcement dog training. So that's how it all started. And over the years, my husband and myself, we got several additional dogs. We had 2 litters. Our first Nova Scotia Dog Tolling Retriever litter was in 2008. And last year we had our second litter. And we breed on a very rare basis. But when we breed, when we have a litter, we typically plan to keep 1 or 2 puppies, and that's what happened last year as well. And over the years with different dogs, I was very fortunate to work, as I said, with different dogs and learn a lot with and from them. And currently we are living with 11 dogs, most of them retrievers and 1 border collie.
Awesome. 11 dogs.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Now you mentioned, and something that I mentioned in your bio, you mentioned that you met, was it, to correct me, because I'm going to say this wrong, I'm sure. You met Sally Sanford. How do you say her name?
Sally Sanford, yes.
Sally Sanford. Mm-hmm. And she is you said she is a clinical certified animal behaviorist.
Yep.
And I used the term behaviorist in your bio as well. And I just wanted to use this opportunity because it's something that I've refined my understanding of recently with regard to that word. Can you help the audience of the show who might not know, when you're saying clinical certified animal behaviorist, and when you're using that term yourself, what does that actually mean?
Yes. So as you know, and I think this is the case for almost everywhere in the world, typically the dog training field, and especially when we talk about problem behavior and development of treatment plans and training programs and so on for dogs and their owners, this is an unregulated field. And the UK has been very progressive, even as early as mid to end 1990s, in the development of this certification scheme, actually, where people, dog trainers or people that are interested in more behavioral work, like working, as I said, with dog owners whose dogs display problem behaviors. So they developed this certification scheme, and people who wanted to get certified had to complete at least a bachelor's degree or a master's degree from an accredited university program. And I think back then, at the time, there were only 1 or 2 accredited university programs, and one of them was at the University of Southampton. And that's I think that's the one that Sally completed. She did her master's of science degree there, and then had to do some supervised hours by, for example, veterinary behaviorists and other certified behaviorists. And that was actually the start of this certification scheme. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think the UK is still working with this type of scheme, but I think they have adjusted the requirements a little bit more. And I also think that there are a few more university programs that are actually accredited.
All right, so I'm learning something. So is to get accredited in the UK as a behaviorist is different than the process in North America?
I think so, yes. I think that the UK process or the UK approach to this is much more stringent and stricter. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that to be able to work with, officially work, this is there's a big gray area to be able to to officially work with problem behavior cases in the UK. I think you have to be certified. And I'm saying this in the way because I'm sure that they are dog trainers or people around that are not certified, but they are still taking on these cases. But I think the UK body that is governing all of this is on the one hand the Association Animal Behavior Society, and the other part is the APBC, APBC. I only remember the short, the abbreviation. So there are two governing bodies, and I think they collaborate a lot. And so I think that's the current status. And just a follow up, and this is also again completely different from the situation on continental Europe. And as you know, Europe has a lot of different smaller or larger countries, and every country is handling this issue differently. In Germany, for example, to be able to work as an official dog trainer, you have to be certified by the local veterinary bureau or agency, governmental agency. And over here in Austria, where I'm hailing from, it is completely different because it's largely unregulated still. And we have a voluntary certification program. That's the one that you mentioned in my introduction. And I was among the first doing this kind of certification back in 2013, I believe. So it's really a very diverse situation all across Europe.
Yeah, we've been defining some of these things for our members in the Animal Training Academy just this past month, and I didn't include many of the things you just talked about because I literally didn't know about them, and I spent a day kind of researching it. So I think you said gray area. I think it's quite confusing.
Yes. So I think, even if you have these certification schemes, as long as they are more or less voluntary for people, of course, you have a lot of people who take on cases they may not be, the best equipped for. I think additionally to this part, I think something that is also contributing to the confusion is that there's a lot of specialization going on, at least here in Europe. I see that many dog trainers are, trying to specialize on a specific niche, which on the one hand is great, and I think we really need specialists. But I also think we need a governing body, a regulation, legislation actually that is governing who can actually work with behavioral cases, with cases of, aggressive, for example, aggressive behavior or fearful behavior, and that there needs to be a specific education backing up that services.
Yeah, getting a little bit sidetracked here, and entertaining my own curiosities. Is the APBC the Association of Pet Behavior Counselors?
Yes, that's the one.
Right,
Thank you so
right.
much for looking at. Yeah. Mhm.
And then the did you mention the ABTC, the Animal Behavior and Training Council? Are they involved? No.
I think they are also involved, yes. And then there is this, and I think I misspoke. There is this kind of ethological society in the UK that, at least initially, they were the certifying body for the CCABs. So yeah.
I have to reach out to these organisations and talk to them and get them on the show.
Yes,
take us
definitely.
So mid-90s, you had your first golden retriever whose name started with S, but you have to remind me.
Utah.
Oh, Utah. It didn't start with S.
Utah.
Started
Yes.
with Y. Utah.
J.
J.
Actually, it's spelled Jutta. Utah.
Utah. And then
It's a very German name.
I like it. We fast forwarded to 2003 when you got your next dog. Where did your... Because obviously in this space somewhere, you tell me where, you decided to pursue an academic career.
Yeah.
Talk us through when that was and how you got decided on.
Yeah. So thank you for reminding me. So actually, the idea of becoming, going to university and study biology has been with me since junior high school, basically. And then after graduating with my A levels from grammar school, I enrolled into actually a biology course at the University of Salzburg. And, I completed almost all of the required classes and courses. And then life happened and I had to drop out. That was in 2006, I believe. And then it took me a couple of years to, find the right direction for me. I was giving some dog training classes in between the time before I actually started or founded Happy Fellow coaching and seminars. Then in 2008. And between 2005-ish, 2006, and 2008, I was giving dog training classes for just, the regular family dog, a little bit of everyday obedience training. And then in 2008, I felt that it's time to take the next level and make this whole thing a little bit more professional. And but during all that time, I was still trying to get an academic education. But back then, and unlike nowadays, back then, the option of doing courses online and enrolling in university courses online or even in a hybrid kind of setting was just non-existent. It was either you were, at the campus and staying at the university and doing it all in person, or if that wasn't possible, you just couldn't go to university. So at least in Austria, I'm not sure how that was in other countries, but at least in Austria back then, there was no alternative route for me to do an undergraduate degree. So I was running my dog training business, and finally, in 2011, my husband and myself, we traveled to the UK we took a couple of dogs with us, and we were actually attending the first WOOF conference, which was organized by Chirag Patel. And it was there at this first WOOF conference that we met Susan and listened to her presentation about the behavior. Now I know what Susan, was referring to. But back then, when I was listening to her presentation, I had no idea that behavior analysis existed, that this is an rounded science about learning and behavior change. And I was just completely struck. I was hooked. I said to Gernot, okay, this is exactly the science. This is exactly what I need to know more about. Because previously, in my practice as a dog trainer, I became more and more frustrated with doing the same things over again, and my own lack of skills that I noticed, and I got so frustrated. So I started to attend webinars and was trying to get input from different dog training organizations it was back then that this webinar technology was in the development and became more accessible and more popular. So I tried to get more education on this route, but listening to Susan's presentation at this first WOOF conference was just an enlightening experience, an amazing learning experience. And I knew then and there, somehow I have to keep trying to do my undergraduate degree and go back to university and try to study ABA. And that's what I did.
Well, they are some significant ripples from listening to Susan speak. And I'm sure you've probably shared that with her, I imagine.
Yes, of course. Yes.
And I understand. I've been there. I first heard Susan in 2010, and it changed the direction of my life. So what happened next?
So what happened next? I was getting in contact with various universities in the UK because I always felt this connection with the English language. I'm not sure if if the listeners agree, but nevertheless, I always enjoyed speaking English and also working, writing stuff in English. So I decided, okay, let's see if there is an opportunity in the UK. And fortunately enough, the University College, the Sparsholt College, which is affiliated with the University of Portsmouth, offered a undergraduate degree in applied animal behavior as a hybrid option, as a hybrid course. So what do I mean by hybrid option? It is basically a mixture of online teaching, working on your assignments from home, the typical reading of scientific articles and textbook readings and so on and so forth. But there was also the requirement for being on campus during 2 or 3 weeks during the semester, and also being at the campus for writing all the written exams. So I was fortunate enough to be able to get to do this undergraduate course, and I have to say I enjoyed it tremendously. It was really a very good foundation for me English-wise, but also, combining animal training, ethology, a little bit of work with zoo animals, animals you typically find in zoos. And so it was really a very good foundation for me. And I graduated in 2015, and with a distinction, basically first class honors. And then I remember the first thing I did when I was sure that I passed, that I could graduate with the bachelor's degree, I immediately applied for the master's course at Queen's University Belfast in Applied Behaviour Analysis, because that was actually my aim. The undergraduate course was just the interim part that I needed to be able to go on to the ABA course. And and again, I was so lucky that they took me, although I come from a completely different background, completely different background and setting. But they were very open, very welcoming as well. And fortunately, this has also been kind of a hybrid situation as well. So most of the teaching was asynchronous online, but we also had once per semester a week where we had to be on campus for some practical stuff. And I cannot stress enough how much I enjoyed actually the ABA course at Queen's University Belfast. And initially, I remember it now vividly talking about all of this journey of mine. I applied to not to graduate with a master's degree, but to basically drop out of the course with a postgraduate diploma. So I would be able to do all the courses, all the classes, but I would not have had the requirement of doing a research project. For whatever reason, the administration staff had me on the list for the master's for the final research project, and emailed me about the tutor that has been assigned to me and all the other admin stuff. And I said to Gernot, to my husband, I don't know, I'm not sure if I want to do this research project, this thesis. Because I was planning to just do the postgraduate diploma, and now I'm on this track with a research thesis. And then I thought, well, never mind. I did the bachelor thesis, so I can do that as well. And again, a very lucky coincidence that I got an amazing tutor or advisor for this research project for my master's thesis. His name is Dr. Camilo Hurtado Parado, and I cannot thank him enough for advising me, and we're still collaborating. He is currently in the U.S. at the Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. He's a professor there, and he's my mentor, and he's the person I go to. Besides Susan, of course, he also is my go-to person for every topics related to behavior analysis. And as I said, I was just very, very lucky to get to know him and to have him as an advisor. And it turned out, so my thesis turned out very, very well, and I graduated in 2016. With the Master's of Science degree in ABA. And I just, during the work for my thesis, during the research project, I thought, I remember I had a panic attack, a nightmare, thinking about not being able to do this anymore after I graduate. And then the idea came to mind to pursue a PhD. So I never planned this. It was just basically out of the the success of the bachelor thesis, of the master's thesis, and me enjoying doing this type of research, this behavior analytic research with dogs and their owners. And so I had the idea of continuing my education with a PhD, and and I was lucky enough to be able to start this long journey in March 2017. And I had no regrets. It was really amazing. I back then I wouldn't have believed anybody who would who would have told me how amazing this journey would be. And I mean, it's been a lot of work, very hard work, very hard years financially, but also, privately. We lost 4 dogs during this five years while I was doing the PhD. So it was at times very, very straining, very stressful. But I am super glad that I was lucky enough to take on this additional challenge and to graduate last year in summer, in July.
Congratulations.
And here we are. Thank you.
and sorry about your losses. I've been, I don't think we've had anyone on the show before who said they had a nightmare which led to them pursuing a PhD.
Yeah.
I can relate to part of your story. I can relate to being in that space where you have to make a decision about, am I going down this academic pathway or not? I chose an alternative option and chose to take that money and invest it in Animal Training Academy. And as you finished, here we are. But I know that it's a stressful decision, and I know that there are many people in our audience who have had to make that stressful decision or might be currently making that stressful decision. I got a email from someone asking me that exact question this week. Here's a list of programs. What one should I do, or should I not do a program? I offered my perspective, and I love that we get your perspective on here. What do you have to say to people though who are in that space, who need to decide? I mean, I think they can take away a lot from your journey and what you've shared.
So it's a great question, and I think if you should pursue. Are we talking about PhD programs?
We're just talking about people who have a problem and they want to pursue a career in training and behavior, and they don't know that they're stressed and they're worried because they don't know, they feel directionless. They don't know what to do. Like, do I just get experience? Like, there's no one here to hold my hand. Do I need a degree? Like, how do I do this?
Yeah. Okay, got you. So I'm definitely biased, but from my personal perspective, I would say that getting a degree in an animal related course field is definitely worth it. I would always suggest to people to look out for programs that offer at least a little bit of practical training as well. So, and this can be especially tricky when you're not able to travel. As for myself, if you're not able to travel to campus, to stay there, to stay extended periods at the campus, to get all this typical university experience with other students and with in-person conversations, talking about research, journal clubs, and so on. So it can be difficult to find the right program. I tend to advise people to go for the complete or online version of programs when they have the option to gain practical experience, either by shadowing people, working in a shelter, or maybe even running their own dog training business, like in my case, so that you can basically combine your academic education with the practical part of the job, which can be depending on, again, your niche, your specialization, which can be very much hands-on. So to answer your question, I tend to say that getting a good academic background in your respective field is always worth it, but I know that there can be a lot of anxieties and a lot of uncertainties also financially, family related, and all sorts of personal things have to be discussed and validated as well, because it's a major decision, as you.
Awesome. Well, I'm confident that's going to be valuable to many people who are listening to this show. And for those who are listening, I encourage you to check out Nicole's profile on ResearchGate and see some of the awesome stuff that she got involved with and is involved with throughout her academic career so far. Titles of her studies are such as The Effects of Non-Contingent Reinforcement on an Arbitrary Response in Domestic Dogs, Controlling Separation-Induced Problem Behavior in Horses Through Target Training, A Systematic Review and Quantitative Analysis of Interteaching, What's in a click?
That's with human students.
I was that one threw me a little bit. I was like, I'm not sure about that one. So thank you for that. What's in a click? The efficacy of condition reinforcement in applied animal training, a systematic review and meta-analysis, a cultural selection analysis of human-dog interactions, using principles from applied behavior analysis to address an undesired behavior, functional analysis and treatment of jumping up in companion dogs. We don't train in vain, a systematic review and meta-analysis of human and canine caregiver training. And it's mine, using clicker training as a treatment of object guarding in 4 companion dogs. So there are, I think, 8 separate podcast episodes there, but we've only got about 15 minutes. So I'm curious to hear about some of your research. One of them that I was talking to you about when we caught up last week, and you said one that took a significant amount of resources was using principles from applied behavior analysis to address an undesired behavior, functional analysis and treatment of jumping up in companion dogs. And
that's quite the title. That's quite a beast. And it conducting the research was also quite a beast, but fun stuff.
I was thinking about that title, or that's maybe not that title because I do well to remember that, but I was thinking about that particular study when I was reading your bio before, and it says in your bio that you conduct research on human-dog interactions and owner training from a behavior analytical perspective. So I really love this, because the listeners of the show, jumping up behavior is a very common challenge that they help pet owners with, their clients with, and the function of that behavior can be so varied between individual dogs, between individual situations. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that particular study if you're open to sharing about it with us.
Oh, definitely. Thank you so much for bringing it up. So, so this was really despite being a lot of work, it was really fun to do this particular research project, because as you said, it involved not only the work with dogs, but it also involved the work with owners. And reading through the titles, I think it becomes maybe not the interteaching one, but typically my research interest is very much fueled by my practice, by what I see in my everyday work with dogs and their owners. And the beauty of behavior analytic research is that we are focusing on the individual teams in front of us, that we can really individually tailor our approaches, our training approaches. And we also have the necessary skills and the tools, very sharp tools to measure, to observe, and to measure, and to display the actual behavior change, hopefully throughout the whole training program. So there's so much to work with, and for this particular research project, I was not only interested in so what are the functions of jumping up, but is it possible? Do we find similar functions than the earlier paper by Dory and colleagues? Or maybe we find an additional function. What we found similar functions. Jumping up was also reinforced or maintained by access to a tangible and also by attention from the owners. And throughout this whole research project, it was important for me to resemble the typical situation of a behavior consultant that is coming into the situation, doing an ecological assessment based on, for example, a questionnaire. You get to know the owners, you get to know the dog, and based on this information, you develop the functional analyses. And then after this step, you identify the maintaining factors, the reinforcers that are maintaining the jumping up, and then you go and design and implement the intervention. And for me, it was important that the owners were actually conducting the functional analyses. So I was basically teaching them how to do this, and they conducted them. They conducted the different conditions, and I was basically just there to collect the data and to measure the behavior change depending on the different conditions. And based on these outcomes, I then designed the intervention. And the intervention in this particular study was non-contingent reinforcement. So the delivery of reinforcement based on a specified time schedule, but irrespective of the actual behavior.
Can you define for those listening who might not know, when you say non-contingent reinforcement, what's your meaning?
Yeah. So I was just trying to explain that, and actually non-contingent reinforcement is a little bit of a misnomer because, as all of you know, the definition of reinforcement is that we increase the frequency, we increase the strength, we increase the magnitude of the behavior. But with this particular type of reinforcer delivery, which is based on a specified time interval, fixed time interval, irrespective of the behavior that the learner, in our case the dog, is showing. So we took the reinforcer that we identified during the functional analysis and implemented it on a time-based schedule, fixed time schedule, and irrespective of what the dog was doing. So, and to teach the owners this particular intervention, I used a treatment package that is called BST, or behavioral skills training. And this is a package of various components, and those components are so they are actually hierarchically structured. So you start with the one component that is the least intrusive, is not the right word, which is the least effort to teach. For example, oral instruction, like explaining to the dog owner, which we typically do. We explain a lot of things to the dog owners, especially how to, how to train their dogs. So this oral instruction is the first component. And once we see that the data has developed stability, we can then introduce the next component, the next phase, which in my case was demonstrating. But to control for additional learning effects, I decided to not to demonstrate the actual intervention with the help of a stuffed dog. And it was actually quite funny because the owners, so away from the actual dogs, the owners were manipulating and kind of role playing the behavior of the dog, and I was simulating and demonstrating the intervention. And remember, the intervention was delivering the previously identified functional reinforcer on a fixed time interval. And so I demonstrated that. And the owners in all of those behavioral skills training phases, the owners had, after the oral explanation, after the demonstration, and after the demonstration plus feedback component, they had time to ask one or two questions, and but they did not get any more instructions. So once they felt that they had a grasp of the intervention, excuse me, I said, okay, let's go get the dog and do the best you can. Do how you think you understood the intervention. And and I was video recording all of those different scenarios, different phases, and measure the behavior changes of the owners, but also of course of the dogs. And there's a certain label or a certain jargon term for this measurement of how accurate the owners were implementing the explained or shown intervention, and the label is called treatment fidelity. And so based on the observations, but also based on the checklist, I was also taking data on that procedural or treatment fidelity or integrity. Different terms around, doesn't matter. What we measure is how accurate and how accurate to the actual plan the owners were implementing the training.
And what did you find?
Well, interesting. The outcomes were, quite variable. So I had, in this particular study, initially I had 5 participants, 5 owner dog teams. For the functional analyses, but unfortunately, based on some changes in the schedule, one of the owners had to drop out. So I continued the study, the treatment study, with 4 owners, and the non-contingent reinforcement was extremely effective for one dog, whose functional reinforcer for jumping up was owner attention, and was moderate effective for 2 dogs and not effective for 1 dog. And so one of the reasons why the intervention was not effective for 1 dog, I think, was because the fixed time interval was arbitrarily decided on my part. And I think if I would have actually looked at the inter-response times of the dog, of how long the intervals are between the jumps, and I would have taken those intervals, those time intervals for the actual fixed time schedule for the non-contingent reinforcement, it would have been more effective for this dog as well. So this is a take-home message for people who are interested in using non-contingent reinforcement, is to make sure to look at the IRTs for giving you an idea on how you can decide on the actual fixed time interval.
And so in this study, the strategy was implemented regardless of the function of the jumping up behavior.
Exactly. Yes. So we used the functional reinforcer that was identified during the functional analyses, which was for some dogs attention, and so social reinforcement, and for at least 1 dog, it was access to a tangible, to an object.
And were they the 2 functions that you found, or were there other functions? And
yeah,
you mentioned
no. Those were the 2 functions that we found. And this is in line with previous research. For example, the other study of examining the function of jumping up by Dory and colleagues. So that's very similar results.
We've got a little bit of time left.
Yes.
For this part 1, I'm curious, out of those 8 research papers that I just mentioned, is there any other ones that really excite you that you'd love to share a little bit about before we wrap up?
Oh my gosh, there are so all of them. It's really hard to choose. As I said, I try to my research interests are very much based on what I see in my practice, and what I hear from colleagues and friends and so on. So I'm actually excited about all of them, but one that has been very, very dear to my heart from the get-go is the one about meta contingencies, interlocking contingencies, between dogs and owners, basically looking a little bit deeper into the human-dog relationships and how these came about from a kind of evolutionary perspective as well, and the three different levels of selection. So that's the one I'm also very proud of.
Can you share with us a little bit more? What are the three different levels of selection?
So the three different levels of selection are one, the biological level of evolutionary level of selection, then the behavioral level of selection by consequences or selection by reinforcement. And then we also have a third level, which is related to culture and to the maintenance of certain practices across groups of humans, for example, human behavior. And I from the beginning, I have been very much interested in the question if and how behavior analyses may contribute to the question why and how humans and ultimately dogs, domestic dogs, came to live together so closely, so that humans describe their dogs as family, as kids, as best friends, as social support, as motivation for continue everyday life. So how did this amazing friendship, companionship, relationship develop? And so these were my initial thoughts when I, together with Camillo, started to work on this theoretical paper. And we, as I already mentioned, we started exploring the three levels of selection, and then talk a little bit about the early days of domestication, how much maybe early dogs may have contributed to the success of early humans, of survival, of the interlocking contingencies and meta contingencies like cultural development of hunting groups, and how this particular niche could have contributed to the relationship to the relationship that we have today with our dogs, and everything in between. And from there, we go to a more recent discussion of interlocks of the communication reinforcement systems, for example, between dogs and their humans, the family members, and we also have a very interesting figure in that paper that highlights or that displays these interlocks between two humans, a father, a kid, and their family dog. And then at the end, the mother also basically praises the whole family, including the dog, for their amazing work together. And this is, I think it's a very interesting line of theoretical research. And I hope to see more of it along the lines. I think it's a very interesting and also very fruitful line of theoretical contemplation of human-dog communication and relationships, interactions, actually.
Well, I feel like there's going to be lots of the listeners of this show now jumping on and downloading your papers. I see on ResearchGate you can request full text. Is that the best place, one of the best places, or where is the best place to see your...
Yes, definitely ResearchGate, or you can always email me or message me through Facebook or whatever. I'm also on Instagram, but email typically works best. And then I'm more than happy to share our papers. But you can also download the ones that are open access. You can just freely download them on ResearchGate or on the actual journal website. Unfortunately, there are some of the articles are behind paywalls. So just feel free to contact me, whatever avenue works for you.
And where can you point people to where they can find you on Instagram and Facebook, and where they can get in touch with you via your website? Where's the best place to get in touch?
Sure. So again, the best way to get in touch with me is by email, and my email is nicole@happy-fellow.com. That's always the best way to contact me. But my Facebook profile is just my name, Nicole Pfaller-Sadovsky. And my Instagram name is Dr.Duckweeds. Duckweeds is my kennel name. So that's a mixture. And on ResearchGate, you can also just search for my name, and then you should be able to find my research.
Awesome. And we will, of course, link to all of that on the write-up on the atamember.com website. We will wrap this up for now as part one. We love hearing about people's behavioural odysseys, as we like to call them. So thank you very much for sharing, Nicole. But we will be joined again by Nicole in our subsequent episode, where she will draw from her awesome knowledge and experience to talk about gun dog training, trained without live birds. And Nicole is going to share 5 benefits of teaching gun dog training using dummies. I can't wait. For now, Nicole, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with us at Animal Training Academy.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. Bye-bye.
We do, of course, really appreciate all of you tuning in today as well. And if you have enjoyed this episode and you were interested in carrying on the conversation about working with our animals in the most positive, funnest, choice-rich ways, then as mentioned at the start of this episode, the Animal Training Academy community is waiting for you. Head on over to www.animaltrainingacademy.com and click on the membership button in the main menu to learn more about what members are describing as the Netflix social media platform for behaviour geeks. That's it for this episode though. We're going to wrap it up there. Thanks again so much everyone for listening. You'll hear from us again soon.